Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing a sit down video, and if you want, you will see chapters listed below where you can just skip ahead if you don't want to listen to the entire video. So in today's video, I decided not to write a script. I wanted to sit here and talk. And to prevent myself from rambling, I brought notes. So I wanted to talk about my health. I made a video a year ago where I kind of talked a little bit about my health. However, in that video, at the time, I chose to not extrapolate and talk specifically about what illness I have, how it would affect me, etc. I chose to not talk numbers. And at the time, I made that decision just due to privacy reason because I had recently at that time been diagnosed with the illness, and I wanted to participate heavily in like forums and websites and stuff dedicated to that illness and other people with it. And like I said in the other video, people on the internet are weird, and you give them a little inch and they will take that little piece of information and they'll turn it into a mile in 5 seconds. But before posting this video, I went back to those websites where I posted anything about my health, like my location, etc., 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 and I just deleted literally everything. So my main motivation for this was, in the last year and a half, I've had like an obsession more so with like healthy at every size and obesity, fat acceptance type videos. And I've watched a lot of content creators, I have for years. But I feel like the whole fat acceptance movement, right, is at this stage where these influencers are just out here lying to y'all. And so I felt like I had some, I don't want to say obligation because I don't have to tell people anything. I felt like I wanted to share the realities of being obese to young people. If I could help deter even one person from thinking that obesity is healthy, then I feel like I would have done a good thing. But obesity does not exist in a vacuum. That is just reality. Most fat people are fat due to all kinds of circumstances. And if you've ever seen My 600-Pound Life, you will notice a theme of how when they go back to these people's childhoods, a lot of them have multiple traumatic events or neglect or abuse happen to them. Like, it is not a coincidence. And the same is true for me. I had the quintessential Black and poor in America childhood. My mother was a single mother. She had me when she was 20 years old. When she was 19, she had my older sister. And then when she was 21, she had my second sister. And my mother had 3 kids by the time she was 22 years old. So my mother was never a particularly ambitious person. She never really had a reason to have kids. She never really had a plan for having kids or raising kids or anything like that. As a Black person who does not have kids, it is extremely normalized in Black culture for some bizarre ass reason to just have children. My mom raised us for 18 solid years on welfare. 18 years. I've been an adult for over 10 years now and have never accessed welfare in the United States. I've never accessed welfare anywhere. But my mother raised us on welfare. I think that there's this culture in the Black community where a lot of Black women just see this as this normal progression of life. Like, you graduate high school, you have kids with no plan, no job, no money, and like the government and the taxpayer will just provide for you. And my mom was essentially that kind of person. She got money every month and she got EBT food stamps every month. And that is how we survived, living in the projects or like government, like supplemented apartment buildings and stuff like that. And that is essentially how I lived for my entire childhood. But to top that off, my mother was also a drug addict. And my mother was a drug addict. My father's sister was a drug addict, paternal aunt, paternal uncle, paternal grandmother. Essentially all of my main family members, the main adult family members, were drug addicts. And so me and my 2 sisters and my 3 cousins at the time were just raised in abject poverty, just neglect, in every sense of the word. And as kids, we experienced just emotional neglect, financial neglect, physical neglect. Like, most of my molars right now have cavities in them, and this is all before the age of 17. I don't remember a time when we went to the dentist regularly or that was ever a thing that anybody cared about. And as an adult now, I realize how abnormal it is to have cavities and fillings in majority of your back teeth. But when you grow up poor, this is just a common occurrence. Your parents just neglect you. They don't really have a reason for neglecting. It's just normalized. And so now that I am a big ass adult, I'm in my 30s now, I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect on just life. And people are probably curious, like, oh, what about your father? So my dad was not a drug addict, surprisingly, but he was a narcissist. And I know these days people love to throw the word narcissist around and they abuse it and they don't really know what the definition is. But I've actually spent about 4 or 5 months studying narcissism just out of pure curiosity. And if you are curious about it, I would recommend you do too, because narcissism is not what people think it is. And narcissists, surprisingly, you'll probably find 1 or 2 of them in your life. They are fairly common. You just have to know what to look for. But my dad was a narcissist. And you hear stories often, right, of like how my father abandoned me. No, my dad never abandoned us. I mean, in the sense that he just went away and lived a life somewhere else. No, that is not a reality for my life. And I know that that sounds crazy. My father was present my entire childhood. He just didn't take care of us. He didn't provide anything for us. But in his mind, he was some kind of God and he did right by us. And he used to tell us this all the time, like, oh, I did so right by all of y'all. And when I'm old, y'all take care of me, right? When I tell you this man is a delusional ass narcissist. And so you have a drug addicted mother and a narcissistic father who doesn't provide anything. And you have all the other things that come with it, which one being is food insecurity. So even though we received welfare, we never had enough food in the house. We lived in a house, most of my childhood, my grandmother's house, and it had me, my 2 sisters, and my 3 cousins, and then my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle. Those were her 2 kids. My aunt and my uncle were my grandmother's kids, my paternal grandmother and paternal aunt and uncle. And it was just chaos all the time. Just stealing money, people fighting, drug deals happening, opening doors and seeing people smoking from a pipe. We lived in a house full of roaches. Like, I mean, I could be here all day if I tried to explain everything to you, but I think you take my point. And so one of the big problems in the house was so many kids, so many mouths to feed. Technically, if the adults in our house had been responsible, the money that we received for food would have been enough to stretch the entire month. Except they never did. And one of the big reasons why, if you don't know about welfare, is because a lot of people on welfare actually sell off their food stamps. So they'll find a person. Let's say you have $200 of food stamps, right? Food stamps can only be used on food. So let's say you have $200 worth of them. You can sell them to a person for, let's say, I don't know, $100, $120. So they give you cash, $120, and you go to the grocery store with them and let them buy 200 USD worth of groceries, and you use your EBT card to do it. And that was a common occurrence because drug addiction is expensive. And so when I was a kid, we went times without food fairly regularly. We went to food pantries. We went to all kinds of food kitchens. I know a lot of churches run food kitchens. And so we used to have to pile into a car and like we would search up like Monday's food service, Wednesday's food service, Friday's food service, Tuesday's food pantry, Thursday's food pantry. And like we went on this rotation again and again for years. So we were food insecure. I've been evicted. We were evicted from our houses when we lived separately with our mother. So we would be evicted from houses like every 3 to like 6 months. We never stayed anywhere a long time. My mom was what you would call a welfare queen, right? I don't know how to describe it. She just didn't feel like she needed to be gainfully employed. You hear stories about how like I had a kid at like 19 and I was a single working mother and I worked hard to put food on the table. No. My mom was the exact opposite of that. She just accessed taxpayer money through the government. And so we would be evicted all the time and we always were moving houses. The number of times I came home as a kid when I was in middle school, high school, and saw eviction notices on the doors is just too damn many. So my father was a narcissist and my paternal aunt, his sister, was also a narcissist. And my paternal grandmother, his mother, was also a narcissist. So if you don't know, so what I learned in learning about narcissism is that narcissists tend to raise narcissists. Like, I don't understand the whole psychology behind it, but it seems it's very common for a narcissistic mother in particular to have one or multiple narcissistic children. And in my life, that has always been true. My aunt and my father are textbook overt, completely low empathy, completely high entitlement narcissists. So to put it in perspective, they treated us like a bug that you crush slowly under your foot. So one is my so I'll tell you a story to give you some perspective. Is my paternal grandmother, my father's mom. So she was this person where if you survived a narcissist, you'll know that a lot of narcissists have an image that they portray in public in front of other people, and then they have their true self that they portray at home. And so my grandmother was well liked by people who knew her when she did have a job, but she, as I became older, I started to realize all the ways in which she was a cruel person. And one story, I'll give you two stories actually, of this, is when we were in elementary school, we had school uniforms. You know, the white top with the navy bottoms and the black shoes, which is a really basic, cheap uniform for kids. But my mom was a drug addict, like I said, and she was on welfare, like I said. She didn't want to get a job, like I said. And so we never had literally money to get new school shit. Like, we just didn't have it. But my grandmother was taking care of my cousins, and because she had, I guess, adopted them, I don't know the particulars of that situation, but she had essentially adopted them. And because she had done that and they were not technically her children, there was some kind of government supplementary aid kind of thing that she got, and this included like a voucher she got for school clothes. So my grandmother would take her voucher and she would go to the store and she would buy school clothes for my three cousins. And then, knowing that me and my two sisters didn't have any school clothes, she would come home with the full bags of school clothes and she would take them out one by one and like admire them and look at them. And, oh, they're going to look so nice tomorrow. Y'all going to look really sharp when y'all go to school. And she would do all of this in front of me and my two sisters. Like, this was a grown-ass woman in her 50s, maybe 60s at the time. And she would do this. And she would do it regularly. And she would be so, I don't know how to describe it, this smug, proud, I'm making you feel like shit kind of attitude about it. And another story with her is, I remember when I was in, I think, high school, because I was a teenager, definitely, 16 or 17, it was tax refund time. And so I think my mom had a job for the year preceding. And so when you are poor and you have multiple kids, you get a tax refund. It's usually not a huge amount of money. But again, when you are poor people treat it like it's goddamn Christmas. And so we were waiting to get new school clothes when my mom got her tax refund. It was over $1,000, maybe $2,000. I don't remember. And so me and my younger sister were both waiting because my older sister had already dropped out of high school. And so we were waiting for it to come in so we could get our new clothes. My mom told us she would give it to us and blah, blah, blah. And so my mom kept saying, oh, it didn't come. It didn't come. It didn't come. And so we were waiting. And then I remember one day my grandmother took me into her room. And so she told me, she looked at me and she said, oh, you didn't know? Your mom got her tax refund like 2 weeks ago. And she spent all of it on drugs. And she looked at me with this happy twinkle in her eye. There's an expression for this. It's called Schadenfreude. It's a German word. It means to be happy at somebody else's pain. And so she was that kind of person. So she would withhold this information and then let you know it at the maximum time where she thought it would be painful. But by this point, the ability to hurt me was already very minimal. Like, after going through all of this traumatic shit, like, I just remember staring at her with a blank face. And so I know you can't see my face right now, but when a person tries to come for me or tries to harm me in some kind of emotional way, I will just react with a very blank affect. Because that's what I learned to do in order to survive the environment that I was raised in. So she was that kind of, I like to do shit to put kids down. Okay, you know what? Let me give you one more story about my grandmother so you can see some other real cruel shit she does. So when I was in high school, we lived with my grandma for a time because we got evicted again. And I remember one night, there was no food in the house. I think she hadn't got her food stamps or whatever. And all the kids were there. We were teenagers by now. And my aunt and uncle was there. And so my grandmother went out and she bought Burger King for everybody in the house. Except for me, my younger sister, and my mother. And she made us sit and watch everybody else eat when she knew full well we didn't have anything to eat. And somebody might say, oh, well, it's your parents' responsibility to feed you. But as an adult who does not have kids, I could not sit and watch kids who I know don't have food not eat when I know I have the money to feed them. And secondly, as an adult and a family member and a grandparent, I feel like there is some kind of moral obligation to take care of your grandkids when your fucking children don't, right? Because again, it's not your responsibility. That's true. Your kids should, but you should have raised your kids better, right? My father is the way he is because she fucking sucks at raising kids. So my grandmother had 4 kids. 3 of them, one is dead. The one child that she had that was the same person died in an accident. When I don't remember him, I was too little. But her other 3 kids, 2 are drug addicts, and one is a drug addict and a narcissist. The other one is just a fucking overt scumbag narcissist. So my 3 cousins that she also raised are all degenerates of society. So she has raised 7 kids, and of those 7 kids, 6 of them turned out to be degenerates. And so when we were growing up in this just filthy, this chaotic environment, my aunt got pregnant. And so she had a baby. It was born addicted to crack cocaine. And at that time, I don't remember why they didn't take the baby away. They didn't. And then she had another baby a few years later, and that baby was also born addicted to crack cocaine. So at this moment, CPS came and they did what they do is they go around the house and they check out the house where the babies will be housed at. And they saw the condition in which we were living in. And then they were just like, we have to take all the kids away. And as an adult now, I realize just how severely abnormal how we were raised was. As a kid, I knew it. Like I didn't want people to come in our house because it was filthy. It had roaches. It was disgusting. But it's like when you are raised in that environment, you become conditioned to feel that it is normal. Like human beings can adjust to anything. As long as they are not in pain, they can adjust to anything. And we adjusted to that environment. And so we were taken into the state's custody. And I remember this day because of what happened a few days later. So the day we were taken into state custody was September 7, 2001. And we all know what happened on September 11, 2001. And so I always get stories from people who say stuff like, I can remember exactly where I was when the first plane hit the North Tower. And it's like, I remember when 9/11 happened, and I have like this very vague memory of it because I was still in shock from having been taken away from my entire family a few days earlier. So no, as an adult, I don't have a clear memory of 9/11, what I felt, what other people around me felt, how other people reacted. Like I have no memory of it because my mind was literally somewhere else. And so for the longest time in my life, I thought as an adult, like, yeah, I made it out. I didn't become a single mother. I was never on welfare. I never became a drug addict. And that's all true. And I felt like I made it out of my childhood completely unscathed, which is a goddamn fool. I don't know why I thought that. As you can see, I'm completely unaware of like my own emotional state. Even to this day, like I'm really bad at processing or being aware of my emotions. I know like some people are really aware of them from second to second and how they feel and they mood. I'm just really disconnected from it, and I always have been. And so I noticed that one of the big ways in which I process trauma is through eating and having food because it makes you happy, right? Especially unhealthy food that is designed in a laboratory to trigger your brain into happiness. And even though I have no intention of being like, oh, my childhood is the reason why I overate. Like, I knew it was unhealthy. As you can see, this kind of childhood, anybody who looks at that kind of childhood can say, yes, that had a huge impact. And I want people to really understand that, because the people that I know right now in my life, like the adults that I know in my life, almost all of them right now, exclusively all of them, come from two-parent households. They come from households that have never been poor. They've never endured any kind of like basic need related abuse or neglect in their entire lives. And I think that people sit on the internet at times and they kind of criticize fat people, and you need to lose weight and you shouldn't have to eat food and food isn't even that good. And I don't understand why you're not. They don't really understand, like, a lot of the people who engage in negative behaviors, not just food, it's because of trauma. I wonder if you've ever seen that video of like the Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia. Like, all of those people, do you think they were raised in two-parent households with all their basic needs being met for the majority of their childhood? Of course not, right? Of course not. That is how they express their trauma and their grief at having been raised horribly as kids. And mine was food. And I want people to clearly understand that, even though I take full accountability for my actions and my choices, and I encourage that everybody does, to some degree, right? Human beings cannot just overcome everything. I have this problem right now at my age. I've noticed that a lot of people who didn't grow up the way that I grew up, they expect poor people to kind of overcome all of this shit. But last time I checked, most of the middle class raised people that I know are middle class. Most people raised upper class are upper class. Like, they never exceed the station in life that they were raised in. They never exceed it. They replicate literally how they were raised. They replicate it as adults. They don't go on to become upper class or millionaires, right? They go on to be average as fuck. But for some reason, people expect kids raised in the most fucking traumatic, deplorable, abusive, neglectful environments to just somehow overcome it, even though they've never overcome anything in their goddamn life. So make that make sense. In this part, I want to talk about my weight gain. So I am 5'11" tall, 180 centimeters. So I've been this tall since I was in like 4th or 5th grade. I was huge. And as a teenager and a child and a teenager, as I said, I was not overweight. I did not notice myself gaining weight until high school, when I started to get stretch marks on my stomach here. But before that, I was not overweight. I was 140 to 150, and at 5'11", 140 to 150 is considered normal BMI, normal range. My stomach was completely flat, none of this little flabby here. And so I started to put on weight. And again, not for lack of trying. I sat down and I thought about my life, and the first time that I can like, I have a distinct memory of like eating too much food back to back was when I was about 10 years old. And that was because we were having a barbecue and there was just food everywhere, chicken everywhere, ribs everywhere. And I remember I went into the kitchen and I took a chicken breast and I like ground it up in like a manual food processor and put mayonnaise and stuff in it. And I put it on bread and I ate it. And then I came back an hour later and I did it again. And I did it again like 6 times. And then finally one of my cousins was just like, how many fucking chicken sandwiches have you eaten? And that was like the first time as an adult that I realized that if I had had access to a lot of food when I was a kid, I probably would have been fat. So I went to college, and I was the first person to go to college. And when I went to college, I remember weighing about 210 or so, which again, at 5'11", my healthy weight range is 130 to like 180. It's huge. Like, when you are tall, your healthy weight range is really huge. So right now I'm sitting at like 95 kilograms, which is about 215 or 20. I don't know. So at this weight, you can see that I'm considered, I think, obese, but not morbidly obese anymore. But when I get down to like 180, or what is that in kilograms? That's about 80 kilograms, I think. When I get down to that weight, I look way better than I do now. Like, this is like a 25, 30 pound difference from the weight I am right now. And so when I went to college, I was 210 to 13 about. And in college, this is the first time in my fucking life that I like had access regularly to food. Like, I wasn't one of those kids whose like parents took them to college and filled their dorm up with all kinds of food. Like, when I went to college, I didn't have anything. I had the most basic fucking meal plan. I didn't have the ability to like go to all the campus restaurants and shit. I could only eat at a few places. But like, when I did eat, like, I would eat a lot. And so in college, my weight ballooned up to, I remember going to the gym and weighing myself, I think 250, 255. And at this point, like I knew I needed to lose weight and I wanted to lose weight and I used to go to the gym and I used to try to lose weight. But at that time in my life, like I was not aware that I had an eating disorder, and I tried calorie in, calorie out. But when I did calorie in, calorie out, literally all of my calories were like carbohydrates, like processed carbohydrates. And of course, when you eat processed carbohydrates, you want to keep fucking eating processed carbohydrates, especially when you have an eating disorder and a predisposition towards eating processed carbohydrates. And so in college, I remember getting down again to about 210, 213. And then in my early 20s, from about 22 to like, I don't even remember. Like, I don't remember. I went through a period of full fucking blown depression. Like, I'm talking, my house wasn't clean. I hadn't like washed my bedding for months. Like, I don't know how I survived this period, like now that I look back on it. But like at that time, if you had asked me if I thought I had depression, I would say no. And so I got down a few years ago, like 188 pounds. And I did that through a ketogenic diet. And I did that for like 5 months. But the ketogenic diet for me was really hard because it causes constipation. Like, I know other people are just like, you have to eat your greens. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many vegetables I eat. If I don't eat any carbohydrates, I get constipated. I don't know why my digestive system works that way, but it does. So I remember when I did keto, I got down to about 188 pounds. I remember that number because I was looking svelte. Like right now, I'm not too far off from 188 pounds, but my muscle mass is so low right now. So my body fat is so much higher than it was back then. So I look fatter. And so I remember at that time, I stopped keto. And of course, my weight went right back up. And at that time, like I said, I went to a period of depression where I ate like absolute fucking shit for, I want to say, 24 months. And when I say absolute shit, I mean every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 365 days a year, probably, almost all. And the way that I ate was I would eat like, you know, freezer made, like ready made, like chicken tenders, fries, tater tots, mozzarella sticks, that kind of stuff. And I would like fry it. I have an air fryer now, but I would fry it and like eat that every single night. And I remember this. After I finished work, I would go to the convenience stores near my house and I would buy like 2 bags of snacks, like chips or something. One sweet and one salty, and then like some kind of chocolate or something, like a drink or something or whatever. So I would eat that, these 4 things. And that, now that I calculate it right now, I want to say is about 2,000 calories. So I was eating 4,000 to 5,000 calories every day, mostly every day. Plus ordering delivery, spending like $200, $300, $400 a month on delivery every month for like 2 years. And so by doing that for 2 years, I got up to my highest weight of 298 pounds at 5'11", which is about 135 kilograms. So when I saw that number on the scale, like it put the fear of God in me. And I was just like, I need to fucking lose weight. Like I feel like you don't really realize how fat you are. But I was huge. I literally broke like stools, like those plastic stool chairs. I broke 2 of them when I was that fat. And so it makes me laugh when I see like really fat people on YouTube, really fat influencers trying to pretend like they don't eat that much. Like I used to eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day and I only made it to 298 in 2 years. So how the fuck are y'all 500 pounds and y'all act like y'all don't eat that much? Like makes sense. So let's talk about symptoms. So you do not just one day wake up with a disease. There's a point where it starts where there's probably no symptoms, and then it gets progressively worse, and there starts to be symptoms, and then eventually it gets bad enough that it's caught on a medical blood and urine panel, right? So for me, it started out with my period. So because I was so fat, my period was not normal. It was irregular. So there was a month one time where I bled for like 20 days, and I went to the hospital to get checked about why my period was still continuing and not stopping. To find out that my uterus wall was extremely thick due to hormone imbalance from being overweight. And so I had to take a medication called Provera, which you take for I think a week. And then after that week is over, your entire uterus just sheds these massive chunks of uterine tissue. And so the doctor was basically like, you need to get on birth control in order to manage your menstruation. And so me, like a goddamn fool, I was like, okay, I'll take the pill. And I took the pill, even though I was not sexually active at the time, because I don't know, I feel like medication is kind of pushed like this. Medication is pushed, right? Like this fixer. And I feel like a lot of doctors, and maybe this is due right now to social conditioning and pressure, a lot of doctors kind of convey information about medication like it's not a big deal. And so I took the birth control. And I took the birth control and my period came back and it was regular, right? And I was on this medication for 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly about that time. And so I continued to gain weight up until 298 pounds. And so during this time, I got to the point where, like, I remember my arms, my hands, and my feet used to tingle. My ankles used to be really swollen from eating so much food. And I used to drink a lot of water during the day at work. I think that's an American thing. We just overhydrate. And so because I drank a lot of water and I ate a lot of carbs and shit, and I knew I knew that carbohydrates held water, and that once the carbohydrate is digested, the water essentially whooshes out, right? Which is why you whoosh when you go on a diet, especially a low-carb diet. It comes from, there's no carbohydrates anymore. They all digested. The water releases. And so during this period, I got to the point where, like, I used to have to pee frequently. And so I started peeing during the day and it was normal. But at night, I used to wake up multiple times to pee. And so people hear this and they probably think, like, that doesn't sound like a big deal. And it doesn't, right? This is a weak signal, right? You can kind of take this symptom and say, oh, well, I drink a lot of water during the day, and that's probably the reason why I wake up. And for me, I own 2 dogs. So my dogs would make noise in the night or something, and I would like get shaken awake, or noise from the street outside, and I would get woken up. And you know how when you wake up, you immediately have to pee. So I would just be like, oh, I got woke up, I have to go pee. And so that went on for like a year and a half. And so one day, this is in early 2020, February of 2020, I woke up and I just felt extremely fatigued. And we all know in February 2020 what was going on in the world. And so I thought I had the Rona. And so I'm just like, my whole body hurts. Like, I feel like shit. Like, why do I feel like this? And so I went to the hospital and I did a PCR because I live in a country that was like really strict about Corona. And the next day I got the result by text message and it was like negative. And so I was having these symptoms where I had fatigue and just like mild body ache. And then like these weird, I want to say hot flash like symptoms. But I realized later it was actually my blood vessels on the surface of my skin opening and closing. This went on for like a few days. It wasn't Corona. I kept feeling hot, but I wasn't hot. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And so I went to the hospital because I was like, you know what? If you go to the hospital and get a blood and urine panel, like surely it will give you some kind of information. And it did. So I go to the hospital. And at the hospitals here, you always have to check your blood pressure when you go to the hospital. So I did. I put my arm in the machine. The machine took my blood pressure. My blood pressure on that day in early February 2020 was 160/100. And you know that's like, I think, level 2 hypertension. And so when I saw that number, I was just like, what the fuck? And the person who I went to the hospital with at that time was also like, what the fuck? We went and I had my blood drawn and I had my urine taken. And so the hospital here is the type of hospital where they can process a certain battery of tests at the hospital in their personal lab. And so my urine and blood was sent and I had to wait like an hour and a half. And then I was called in and the doctor was just like, are you on your period by chance? And I was like, no. And he was like, And so they transferred me over to another doctor. So that doctor told me what my disease was. And so the disease, this is the big part of the video. The disease that I was diagnosed with is kidney disease or renal disease. At the time that I went to the hospital, my blood pressure was 160/100, like I said. And high blood pressure, if you didn't know, the kidneys play a major role in maintaining blood pressure. So if your kidneys start to be damaged, your blood pressure will go up. If your blood pressure is high because of something else, it will damage the kidneys. And so when I saw that number, and when the doctor saw that number, they immediately go to something being wrong with your fucking kidneys. And so the actual disease that I was diagnosed with, because kidney disease is obviously the umbrella, is called FSGS. And I'm not going to try to say it. And it's type 2 FSGS. You have primary and you have secondary. And from what I understand about FSGS type 2 is that it is brought on by like inflammation in the body from being overweight, because obesity causes inflammation in the body. So does eating heavily processed, unhealthy carbohydrates and those types of food. They cause inflammation in the body. So the kidney organ helps to maintain the alkaline blood, right? Your blood is naturally slightly alkaline. It helps to do that. And so when you eat a bunch of unhealthy food, it fucks it up. And so I have FSGS. And so one of the ways they help to determine whether or not a person has kidney disease is by two values. The first one is called GFR. I will not try to say it. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. And this value essentially tells you how well your kidneys are filtering blood, how much they filter at any given time, and essentially how well they are working. And so at the time that I was diagnosed, my GFR was 37. And so I'll put like a sign up on the screen. You can see what a supposed normal GFR is for a person who was in their 30s. It's really high. I think it's like 100 and something. But obviously most people's are probably not that high. That's like the ideal, if you live the most ideal healthy life, healthy diet number. And since most people don't, most people will tend to be lower than that, even though you are technically still healthy and don't have kidney disease. And so the second value that they check is called creatinine. So do not confuse this with creatine. Creatine is the stuff the powder that a lot of bodybuilders or fitness people eat in order to like support muscle growth. Creatinine is a value they use to determine how well your kidneys are functioning. And so in the country that I live in, the scale for this was 0.8 to 1.2. Basically, if my kidneys are able to maintain that range, my kidneys are considered healthy. So at the time that I was diagnosed in 2020, my creatinine level was 1.6. So 0.4 higher than it should have been. And people probably hear that number and think, oh, well, it's really not that high. And technically it's not. Because people whose kidney disease has progressed to full failure, theirs is like 20, right? 15, 20, right? And so this number now doctors use to gauge how well the kidneys are doing, or if it gets worse, they use it to gauge how bad the kidneys are getting or how fast. And so those two numbers, I found out on that day in my early 30s that I had FSGS, kidney disease. And at that value that I had, the number 37, that's called stage 3B kidney failure. And another thing I forgot to mention with kidney disease is also protein urine. So human beings naturally release protein in their urine, and it's about 0.5 grams according to the scale that they use here. I don't know what it is in the U.S. But at the time, my protein was 1.5, so 3 fucking times higher than it should have been. And so in that time when I lost weight and I brought my blood pressure down and I started eating healthier, my GFR, my protein urine also went down from 1.5 to 1. And for the doctor, that's considered, again, an improvement. And even though 0.5 is not possible for me, getting it to like 0.9, 0.8, all of these things help to increase the longevity of the kidney function that I have left. So the protein spilling out of my kidneys is a big part of the reason why my kidneys are getting worse, right? The excess protein spillage. So that is not the only health issue that I had. So at that time, I also had a heart arrhythmia, and I still have a heart arrhythmia. So the birth control that I was taking eventually gave me a heart arrhythmia. Apparently, this is common in birth control. So if you take birth control, you need to be fucking aware of this shit. So it gave me a heart arrhythmia to the point where my heart would just like, at night especially, just start to beat really fast. And the highest that I calculated a beating was like 150 beats per minute. And I was laying down flat asleep. And so because of the symptoms that the birth control caused, including the heart arrhythmia, I essentially had to be treated for kidney disease and heart arrhythmia at the same fucking time in my early 30s. And so my heart arrhythmia was beating. They make you wear like this 24-hour like monitor. I'll put a picture somewhere on the screen. It's called a Holter monitor to measure how many beats you have for the total day and how many of those beats are arrhythmia. And so I had like 100 and something thousand beats for a 24-hour period. And of those beats, 33,000 of them were an arrhythmia called a PVC. It's essentially your heart beats and it beats again at the same time, and it causes like a knocking effect. And the problem with a PVC is that when it's beaten at 33,000, which was 26% of my heartbeats were irregular, that number is so high that if it is allowed to continue to beat like that, it could cause your heart ejection fraction, which is like how quickly how well the heart extracts blood in order to push it out. I don't know specifically, but it causes the number called an ejection fraction to lower, which is something you don't want if you want a fucking healthy heart. And so I was seeing a cardiologist and also a kidney doctor. So we all know what a cardiologist is, but kidney doctors are called nephrologists. Nephrology, the study of the kidney. And so I was seeing two doctors at the same time, back to back. And so for my heart arrhythmia, we couldn't figure out what it was. And so finally, one of the cardiologists was just like, you know what, let's try to stop all the unnecessary medications. And so I was on birth control. He was like, stop it. And so I went off birth control. And for the first time in like 2 or 3 years, I got back my normal period. So after about 24 or so days after I stopped taking the last pill, my menstruation came back normally. And within like literally 12 hours of my menstruation coming back, the heart arrhythmia plummeted. Like I'm talking about the number of beats. Like I was just like, oh my God, like did the heart arrhythmia disappear? Like that's how dramatic the drop was. So it is clear that the arrhythmia is somehow related to my hormones and related to like the fluctuations of my hormones. And so it went from 33,000 beats a day of PVCs down to like 4%. I don't know what the exact number of it was, but I did a second Holter monitor and I told the doctor this and it went down to 4%. And now 2 years later, it's still there. It is even less than 4%. And one day I will have to address it because you cannot just have irregular heartbeat. Over time, it will weaken your heart. It might take much longer than 33,000 beats would have, but it's just not good to have. And one of the ways in which that is treated is by a process called ablation, where they literally go through your leg. They go through your leg, the jugular in your leg, and they go all the way up into the heart. And they do like a search around to figure out what part of the heart is causing the arrhythmia, and then they literally take that part and they stun it. They freeze it off until it stops. So I'll have to worry about that at some point in the future. So to get back to my kidney disease. And so I had kidney disease. I had a heart arrhythmia. My heart arrhythmia eventually got better. And so for my kidney disease, you have to do a kidney biopsy where they literally take like a staple gun with a needle on it and they go into your kidney and they pull out multiple samples of the kidney muscle to determine based on like that sample under a microscope how bad the kidney damage is. And so when they sent my sample off to the lab, I found out that my kidneys are 80% damaged. So it means 80% scar tissue. And scar tissue, as we all know, doesn't disappear. It doesn't get better. So I feel like a lot of people know that like the liver can get better. The liver can to some degree heal itself, but the kidneys cannot heal themselves. Most damage sustained for the kidneys is usually permanent. So there are two types of kidney damage. One is acute and one is chronic. So acute means that some kind of event happened to you suddenly, maybe like a virus overload that causes your kidneys to be damaged temporarily. But it may come back. There's a possibility for it to come back because the actual kidney filter muscle is not damaged. And there's chronic kidney disease, which means that the kidneys got bad over a long time and the damage is permanent. And I have obviously chronic kidney disease. And so my kidneys they suspect about 80%, 75 to 80% damaged. And so after that, I have to get on several medications. The medication that I take my first medication is ACE inhibitors, essentially blood pressure medicine. And the reason that I take blood pressure medicine is because my blood pressure, one, was really fucking high. And really fucking high blood pressure is really bad for your kidneys. And I know that high blood pressure is very normal, especially for older people. The older your body gets, it just loses the ability to control its own blood pressure. It just does. And it's for a 70-year-old, it's really normal to be on blood pressure medication. It's just normal. But for somebody in their 30s, it's not. And so I take blood pressure medication twice a day, 80 milligrams a day, 40 milligrams each. One in the morning, one at night. And so my blood pressure now, as of today, is completely normal, in the normal range. It's not too low, not high. And so that essentially helps to protect your kidneys from further damage, right? Because there exists no scenario where my kidneys get better. Further damage is all I can stop, right? And the other medication that I take is one for cholesterol. At the time that I was diagnosed and when I was eating unhealthy as fuck, my cholesterol was like 161. Like, that's not funny. I'm not laughing, but it was 160, 60 something, and that's really high. And I've been taking cholesterol medication for a few years now. And right now it's like 77, which is considered healthy range. And a few months ago, I asked my nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor, I asked him, like, hey, since I'm eating healthy and like losing weight and shit, like, can I get off this cholesterol medicine? Like, why do I need it? And so I got off it. For 4 months, I stopped taking it. And so when I went back for my next appointment, my cholesterol had just went up to like 124. And so the doctor is just like, more than likely, the reason why it continues to be highish is because your body's ability to remove cholesterol is just not good. And in some people, it's not good. And in black people, it's really not fucking good. There's some racial aspects. There's still the fact that I'm still technically slightly overweight as an aspect. And so I had to go back on my cholesterol medicine. And so now my cholesterol is back down again. And the final medicine that I take is a medicine called Farxiga. It has two names. And this medicine was approved recently for kidney patients. It's originally used for diabetic patients, actually. But it was approved for kidney patients to essentially help to maintain your GFR, which is your kidney filtration rate. I don't know specifically the science behind it. I admit I don't know the whole science behind it. But it has shown in lab research and studies that it allows a kidney patient to stave off full kidney failure for much longer than patients who don't take it. So in the country that I live in right now, this medication is really cheap. So that's why I take it. There isn't like a national healthcare system here, and like the government actually prevents companies from charging too fucking much for medication like they do in the US. So that medication right now is really cheap and available to me. But when I go back to the US, it will cost me $500 per month for 30 pills. And those are the three medications that I take. So, the long-term prognosis. So, as I said, when I first got diagnosed with kidney disease, my kidney value was about 37. And in that time, it has gone up to 50. And it, of course, it moves 49 to 50 some, right? It goes back and forth. It's not like a hard set number. And so when I was first diagnosed, the doctor suspected that I had like 7 more years of kidney function left. So I'd be on dialysis in my 40s at some point. But like most things, that's just a guesstimate. He can't say for sure. So since I've gone on like a mostly plant-based diet, that will surely extend that time. But again, if I get any other kind of illness or something that acutely affects my kidneys, it could send me into dialysis much sooner. We can't know these things. And so there's only treatment for kidney disease. There is no cure. Like I said, the kidney function will never come back. My kidney muscle will never not be damaged. And so it will eventually go down and down and down until it reaches level 20%, a GFR of 20. And once I reach a GFR of 20, that is the point in which I can be put on the transplant list. So kidney disease is treated through lifestyle changes and eventually dialysis and then eventually a kidney transplant. These are the only options. And so I want to kind of wake people up about transplants as well. You know how when you see in a movie a person gets a transplant and then it shows them like going off into the sunset, like living their life happily? That's a lie. It doesn't happen like that. Every organ that is transplanted, the lung, the kidneys, the heart, the pancreas, the liver, all of them, they have a certain amount of time that they generally last. So for kidneys, it's about 12 to 15 years. You get a kidney transplant, it'll last about that time. Obviously, some people go into 20, 25 years. If it lasts longer, great, right? Doctors are really happy when they last a long time. But sometimes they fail before. So there is no cure. That is only a treatment option. And of course, people talk about transplants like it's not a big ass deal. Like you have to take 30 pills a day, you lose your hair and shit, you have all these side effects. Your immune system is being suppressed to allow the organ to function. There's this whole battery of fucking issues that comes with transplants. I really hate how transplantation is just seen as like, you go to the hospital, you get a transplant, you come out and you're healthy, you're living your life, you're all happy and shit like that. No, that's not how it works. It comes with a lot of fucking problems. But the only, I guess, upside of kidney disease is that it is one of the only major organ systems in which there is a way to keep you alive once it fails, and that is dialysis. And there are two types of dialysis. One, they put a tube in your stomach and they essentially use the lining of the stomach to put a solution inside and pull out the toxins through, I guess, your skin. It's like a filter. Like, think of a coffee filter. It pulls the toxins into the liquid and then the liquid is removed. And then the most common one is essentially the one where they have the fistula in the arm somewhere, and they essentially hook you up to a machine and they spend 4 hours 3 times a week pulling all the blood out and taking all the fluid out and cleaning your blood and returning it back to your body. And those are the only options for me in the future. So it is not guaranteed that I will go into kidney failure in my lifetime. Who knows? I could die next year of something else, right? I could die in a car accident. But it is more than likely, if I continue to live until 60 and 70, I will at some point go into kidney failure, need a transplant, and be on dialysis. That is the reality of my life. And yes, this was caused by being overweight. Do not be mistaken. Nobody in my family has kidney disease that I know of or that they know of. My mom is 5'9" tall, and she was always overweight my entire childhood. 350 pounds. I only made it up to 290 some pounds. She was 350 pounds my entire childhood. She had high blood pressure my entire childhood. She took medication my entire childhood. And I never saw her eating particularly healthy. Of course, you have to maintain a 350-pound structure. You don't eat healthy. I never saw her go into kidney failure or be diagnosed with kidney disease. And I think that is a big part of the reason why I didn't take the idea of high blood pressure seriously. Because in my family, it was just normalized. Like I said, in America, it's bizarrely normalized where people don't take these illnesses fucking seriously. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother that I told y'all about earlier in this video, she had diabetes, and she had high blood pressure, and she had a fucking mastectomy on one side. She had breast cancer at some point. And I had never in my life seen her eat any differently having all of these diseases. Never once. And she lived to be 75, 76, I don't know. I stopped talking to her a long time ago. So there is this culture of obese people, surprisingly, right? Sick people with multiple chronic illnesses just really normalizing, and kids being kind of exposed to that, and these illnesses actually really causing big problems, especially in the black community. A lot of black people are on fucking dialysis, if y'all didn't know. And a lot of people are on dialysis, are over fucking weight, and they continue to eat poorly. And if you didn't know, when you go on dialysis, you can no longer eat foods high in phosphorus or potassium. Now, what is high in phosphorus? Cheese. All cheese is all milk. Products are high, butters are all high in potassium, phosphorus. Gone. You can't eat them. You can eat them very sparingly, or it causes fucking issues and it will kill you. Another one, potassium. What is high in potassium? Stuff like bananas are high in potassium, potatoes are high in potassium, right? There are stories of people on dialysis eating potato salad and just not following their diet at all, right? Eating potato salad because they wanted to eat whatever they want, and the doctor can't tell me how to live my life, and just not waking up the next day because the potassium in their body just goes around and around, because your kidney's job is to recognize, there's an excess of a mineral we don't need, and your kidney pulls all of that excess out and it flushes, right? So when a normal person with kidney function eats too much potassium, their body just flushes the excess. It won't hurt you. Same with phosphorus, the same with other minerals, same with water, right? When you drink a bunch of water, your kidneys immediately initiate release to fill your bladder and pee out the water that was already in your body, right? So dialysis patients have to cut down on how much water they drink. They can no longer drink freely. You can drink, I think, 32 ounces of water a day, and that is it. You should not drink more, because the water will just circulate through your body. It doesn't go anywhere because it can't go anywhere because the kidneys don't work, and the kidneys don't feed out into the bladder anymore, and you don't pee anymore. So it will sit there and overstress your heart from your heart beating too fast because you have too much water in your fucking body, which is why, like I said earlier in the video, a lot of dialysis and kidney patients die of heart disease, stressing the heart through excess fluid overload. And so now I'll move on to diet. For kidneys patients, we have to be on a low protein diet. And if you didn't know, protein actually has rankings. I feel like people know this basic information, but they don't take it seriously. You know how doctors tell you, don't eat a lot of red meat. That's because red meat is literally at the bottom of protein. People like to say, people need animal protein, and that's true. But The ranking is plant protein is the best kind of protein you can put in your body, period. I know people like to argue about this. Oh, soy is bad for you, tofu, whatever. It's not. It's the best. It's been proven the best by studies. Get over it. In societies where people eat a lot of plant protein, they tend to fucking live longer. In East Asian countries, they eat a lot of plant protein. They also tend to live longer, right? So plant protein is at the top. So going vegan for kidney patients will greatly improve the longevity of your leftover kidney function. After that, we get to fish protein, especially fish high in omega-3s like salmon. And then you get down to chicken. Chicken, of course, white meat chicken is better than dark meat chicken. And then you have your pork and your beef, which you shouldn't eat. You can have it occasionally. Having an occasional piece, 100 grams of beef will not, of course, make my kidneys worse. But not eating it would be better for me. So a lot of red meat and processed foods cause your blood to become acidic. Another role of your kidneys is to maintain a slightly alkaline blood. And so when you eat, right, bread and pasta and processed shit and carbonated drinks and whatever kind of acidic foods, your blood becomes acidic for a short amount of time. And so what your kidneys do is they essentially click on and start to work to bring the acidity down. This is why doctors recommend that you eat like a lot of dark greens. And the reason is because those foods are naturally alkaline. Lemons are naturally alkaline. Limes are naturally alkaline. And so when you, for example, let's say you had a steak, 1/4 of your plate was a steak, and then you had a potato, and then you had broccoli, or let's say kale. Kale is better. You had kale on 1/2 of your plate. The potato will cause an acidic reaction in your blood. So will the steak. But the kale will do the opposite and cause an alkaline reaction. So it will essentially balance out the two things that you ate that were acidic and will essentially assist your kidneys to keep the blood alkaline. And so I became a vegan, mostly vegan. I say mostly vegan because the country I live in, veganism is not really, extremely popular. And so getting access to certain things is sometimes really hard. But since I've been eating vegan, at least 85 to 90% vegan most of the time, and not having any kind of fast food and shit like that for these last few years, my kidney function has essentially maintained itself. And so there are times in the last few years, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm perfect. There have been times in the last few years where I've like had like stuff that I didn't need to have, like pizza or something. Again, not a lot, just even a little of it is a necessary amount. And like I wasn't eating enough plant protein and shit like that. And I would get like cravings and stuff and like for unhealthy food, and I would still eat it. Right now in my life, I can say that like I'm done with any kind of like processed unhealthy junk food, like for the rest of my fucking life. And I had to like get to that point. And it's been like, I think 17 or 18 days since I decided I'm just not having it at all anymore. Like I need to lose right now like 15 or 16 kilograms. And like I'm working right now to the end of the year to lose that weight. I think it'll take me until like January or whatever, or February to lose the rest of the weight. Like I'm not planning anymore. That is my diet. My diet is mostly plant protein. When I eat plant protein, I can eat a higher protein. So if I was eating meat, for example, I would only be able to have like 40 grams of protein a day, which is ridiculous. I'm 5'11" tall. But when I eat plant protein, I can have more to like 70, 80, 90 grams of plant protein a day. And that will essentially help to stave off muscle loss. Like I've lost a lot of muscle just in the last few years because at the beginning, I wasn't eating plant protein because I didn't know about veganism being better. I had to find that out from like a kidney community. So if you don't know, doctors don't really give you all the information. They just don't. Most patients are non-compliant as fuck, and they don't like rules, and they don't like having to listen to doctors. And so doctors make the unfair assumption that you also don't want that information. And so I literally had to find this information out for myself. And like I went to see my doctor, and I was like, I heard that like by eating plant protein, you can keep your kidney function longer. And he was like, yeah, that's scientific fact. Like that's been proven through a bunch of studies. But he didn't tell me that because he probably assumed, like the rest of his patients, I didn't want to consider veganism, which in my opinion is unfair. So that's my diet. That's what I eat. I want to talk to people about the scary parts of kidney disease because I feel like people really fucking need to hear this. There is this culture in America, I've noticed in particular, in which Americans treat like disease like it's not that fucking serious. Like, I don't know what that is. It's like this tee-hee, like I have high blood pressure. I have high blood sugar. I'll just take a medicine or a pill and like, I'll be fine. This kind of like bullshitty attitude about it. But the reality is that kidney disease is the 10th leading cause of death in America. I think in 2021 it killed 50,000 people. Even though heart disease killed like 600,000, kidney disease is common enough. It's so common that the CDC suspects that about 37 million Americans have kidney disease. They just don't know it. So one point that I want to make sure that you understand is that kidney disease is probably one of the most silent fucking killers. Literally, it kills people in their sleep. They go to sleep one night and they don't wake up because their kidneys failed, and it failed a week ago. And it takes time for it to get to the point where your blood builds up toxins, and those toxins kill you. And there have been cases where people went to sleep and just never woke up. And during the autopsies, they found that the person's kidneys had essentially shut down, and they were not aware of it. So it will get to the point where your kidney function will decrease almost in an asymptomatic or non-serious type of way. Like I said, for me, it was waking up at night to kind of pee, but I also drank like 7 or 8 liters of fucking water a day, and I assumed that was the reason why, right? Your kidneys don't really feel pain. So right now, my kidneys are scarred, right? They don't hurt. The scarring doesn't hurt. When they became scarred, it didn't hurt. I never felt it. I never noticed it, right? If your liver starts to fail, right? We all know your skin and your eyes start to yellow, right? Jaundice happens. If your heart is starting to fail, you won't be able to fucking walk. If your lungs start to fail, you won't be able to walk. If your brain starts to fail, your speech is slurred, your ability to move is messed up, right? But the kidneys will sit and they will get progressively worse for years with almost no symptoms. So my nephrologist told me that they fairly regularly get new kidney patients that are in full kidney failure, 10% function, right? From 20% and below, that's when you have to start dialysis. And so they will get people in the ER with 10% kidney function, and they had no idea preceding that. They had no idea because the symptoms weren't there. And so I feel like people don't really understand. They feel like, oh my God, Cosmic Nebula, this disease seems so serious. And it's like, out of 100 people watching this video, 10 of y'all have kidney disease, and you just don't know it because it happens so slowly. I got diagnosed in my early 30s, but the shit was more than likely present in my mid 20s. Like, it didn't take a year for my kidneys to get 80% damage. That's not how any disease work, right? Cancer doesn't get to stage 5 in a couple of months. It's not really how most cancers work. They take years to grow to that point. And so during the time where my kidneys were most definitely getting bad, I had gotten during that time, during my 20s, I had I want to say 4 or 5 or 6. Because here they have national health care. They have a healthcare system in which the government encourages preventative care. And so I would get text messages like, hey, go get your yearly health check, and it would be free, right? The taxpayers pay for it. The taxpayers pay for it, obviously, but they want you to get it. So I was getting blood tests done, and my kidney function was probably declining past the normal range for my age for years. And the doctor simply didn't let me know that. And so the second warning I want to give to people is that you need to take responsibility for your blood work. So most people go to general practitioners, right? And general practitioners are good at their job. They are doctors, they have degrees, and they earn it. They are mostly competent. But the issue is that general practitioners are general practitioners, general. They are not specialists. So what a nephrologist might immediately notice on a blood work, a general practitioner wouldn't notice, right? So kidney disease is oftentimes diagnosed when your kidney value, your GFR value reaches 60 or below. Now, let's say you reached 60. By the time you reached 60, that's already stage 2 or 3 kidney failure. If disease is present. Again, this is based on age. Age is a very important factor. A number of 60 for an 80-year-old is fine. He will probably die before it ever reached. You understand what I'm saying? As you age, your body, all of your organs age with you, right? So all those values and what is considered normal for that organ at that age decreases, obviously. So 60 for an 80-year-old would be great. 60 for a 15-year-old is a fucking problem. 16-year-old for a 20, 30-year-old is a problem. You understand what I'm saying? And so even 80 is considered a problem for people in our age. As you saw by the graph I put up, your kidney function numbers, if you're a healthy individual, should be relatively high. And so doctors, unfortunately, overlook downtrending kidney numbers. When they are in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, they overlook them. So they'll get the lab results back and look for any red marks, and there's no red marks to say abnormal. They'll be like, oh, you're fine, you're really healthy, and they'll move you on. And so I actually had a conversation with somebody on a kidney forum where he said he got diagnosed with kidney disease. And so he went back and he looked at his records, and his kidney function had been falling for like 7 years. And his general practitioner, the same fucking doctor he went to for the entirety of that 7 years, never brought it up because he never noticed it. So you need to be aware of that. Kidney disease, renal diseases are probably some of the most silent diseases. Because kidney disease technically kills less people than heart disease, which it probably doesn't, because kidney patients have the highest rate of dying from heart problems, right? So I wonder how many of those numbers are included in the cardiac disease when the person also had renal disease present. So a lot of doctors simply don't campaign about it. And the two biggest contributors to kidney damage, you want to know what it is? High blood pressure and diabetes. And if you have both of them, you are on a straight fucking train to dialysis. If you have both of them and you don't control them, you are on a straight train to dialysis. And this goes for type 1 and type 2 diabetics. I love how people think that like somehow, oh, it's not my fault I have diabetes. Yeah, type 1, a lot of type 1 diabetics end up on dialysis because when they are younger, they feel like they can do whatever they want and they shouldn't have to manage their blood sugar. And high blood sugar fucks up your kidneys. High blood pressure fucks up your kidneys. Both of them being present will both destroy your kidneys. And they'll do it in a short amount of time, to a year, 2 years, without you going to the hospital to get a health check. They'll destroy them. And so most dialysis patients are on dialysis because of those two diseases, diabetes and high blood pressure. And most of them, of course, are obese, right? But the problem is that in American society, we just don't talk about it. And I asked the doctor here, like, how come I've never heard all of this information about kidney disease? And he told me, kidney disease is just not campaigned about as much as cancer is and as much as cardiovascular disease is, because they both kill more people, right? Except high blood pressure is very common, and diabetes is also very common. A lot of old people develop diabetes as they age. Even if they try to be healthy, they can develop, or it could be genetic, right? But I've noticed where a lot of high blood pressure patients have no idea that not treating their high blood pressure can lead to kidney disease. They have no fucking idea. No one has ever told them. A lot of diabetics have no idea. When we talk about these two diseases, what do people say? You could have a heart attack. You could have a stroke. You could lose a foot. You could lose your vision. Good luck with the nerve damage, right? We say the same things. But nobody says, yeah, it could damage your kidneys permanently and lead to fucking dialysis, idiot. Nobody says that. And it needs to be said. And I'm saying it to you right now. If you have high blood pressure, I don't care how high it is, and you don't treat it, it will lead to kidney failure. It will. If you have diabetes and you don't take it seriously, it will lead to dialysis. So you'll have both. You'll have kidney failure and you'll have diabetes. If you are obese, the simple act of being obese and having extra unnecessary fat on your body, first of all, raises inflammation. So if you go back right now and you check your blood work, you will probably find that your GFR is probably not as high as the GFR on the chart that I put above for your age range. So this does not mean that you have kidney disease. It does not. Do not freak yourself the fuck out. It probably doesn't. But you can see that because you are so fucking fat, your kidneys don't work that well. You are essentially overloading them. They have to process all of this blood to this big ass body that you have gluttoned yourself to, right? For me, it's the same. Your kidneys have to work extra hard to support processed food diets. They are being put under stress. And the majority of kidney failure patients right now are old people, right? In their 60s, 70s, 80s. And the reason for this is simply because, like I said, your organs age as you age. Generally, if you maintain a healthy lifestyle, you will not enter kidney failure. But for the most part, most people kind of have, snacks here and there, eat processed food here and there. And after 50 years of doing that shit, 60 years of doing that shit, your body shuts the fuck down. Like, eventually, you pay the price. Eventually, you pay the price for it. And nothing is free. And so you will see a lot of wear and natural wear and tear over life and kidney failure in a lot of older adults. Because a lot of people will look at me and say, oh, well, I've never been fat and I eat unhealthy food all the time. Like, nothing's going to happen to me. You are writing a check that your health will eventually fucking cash. Like, being skinny does not protect you from kidney disease, doesn't protect you from diabetes, doesn't protect you from high cholesterol or fucking heart attack. It does not. I love how people think that it does, but it doesn't. And so this brings me to my final point. These fat influencers on social media, on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. Have y'all noticed this trend where these fat influencers all of a sudden start to kind of mention and like allude to going to see the doctor, and I have an appointment with my doctor, and me and my doctor are working on a plan together to get myself in my best shape, and all this bullshit fucking euphemism roundabout talking ass shit. They are alluding to being unhealthy, to being sick, right? And I noticed this trend in watching like a bunch of reaction channels react to like these fat YouTubers, is that a lot of these YouTubers seem to have regular appointments with their doctor. Now, as a person who is healthy, if you are a healthy person, how often do you see your doctor? Once a year, right? For your yearly health check. You might go for like a severe cold or like the flu or some shit like that, a flu shot, whatever. You might go for that. But to see your doctor for a health check, you go once a year. That's how normal people go once or twice every 1 or 2 years. That's what normal healthy people do. I go to see my doctor every 4 months. And I noticed that a lot of these fat influencers go to see their doctor way too fucking frequently to not have chronic illnesses. And not only do they have likely chronic illnesses, they sit on the internet and they talk about it. Like I said, this is an American fucking culture thing. They talk about it in this like positive and optimistic and not really that fucking serious way. And they don't tell you they don't tell you their weight. They don't tell you their lab work numbers. They don't tell you what medications they take. They don't tell you any of this shit, right? They sit on the internet making all of these little weird diatribes about how they're just trying to find their best self. And even if they make mistakes, they'll get there. And these motherfuckers have multiple chronic illnesses that they are withholding from you. And I have a problem with that. Because what it does is it teaches a lot of, especially young people who don't have health problems yet, that they will not have health problems in their 30s and 40s. And a lot of these women clearly have health problems in their 30s and 40s because they go to the doctor way too fucking much. And now I notice there's a trend where they all suddenly want to lose weight, but not for health. I want to lose weight just because I want to feel better about myself. No, bitch, you want to get your fucking liver numbers down. You want to get your kidney numbers up. That's why. You want to get your cholesterol down. That's why. You want to get your blood, your ACL, your blood sugar values down. That's why you want to get your blood pressure down. That's why the doctor told you that if you don't get this shit to fucking together, you are going to die early. That's what happened. That's why you suddenly had a change of heart. That's why you took Ozempic. That's why you're working out now. That's why you're working with this company who will provide your subscribers with a discount. They just click the link below. That's why. That's why. And they get on the internet and they don't tell you that. They don't say, for the last 5 years when I was making videos telling you guys that being fat wasn't unhealthy, oops, it was, and now I have this whole battery of issues and I need to get them fixed or I'm going to be in the grave in a few years. They don't tell you that, right? And I want you to be aware of that. There exists no scenario in which being obese is healthy. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Go to a nursing home right now and tell me how many obese people are there in their 70s, 80s. They don't exist. They don't exist. If you are in your teens and your 20s, especially early 20s, and you are fat, and you feel like, oh, well, nothing bad has happened yet, it will eventually. And it will happen to everybody. I want everybody to understand this. Do not watch this video and say, oh my God, I feel so sorry for you. Like you have kidney disease. You could go into kidney failure. Like that's so sad. Every single person on this earth develops an illness and they die. Like when people say died of old age, they died of a stroke. Like it doesn't exist. There's no scenario in which you just go into, like you just die and turn into butterflies and fly away. Some disease will kill your ass. I already know what mine is. It's going to be kidney disease. It's going to get me probably in my 60s or 70s. There's nothing I can do about it now, right? Except for to try to live as best a life I can and maintain my health as best as I can for what I have left. And to try to warn other people not to be fucking stupid like me. If you made it to this far in the video and you listened to the entire thing, I hope you understand the seriousness of your health. I know people say stuff like, you only have one body, you only have one life, and like a lot of people think that it's a joke, and I know that I didn't take it as seriously as I should have either. But if you are overweight or you have high blood pressure or diabetes or you are in a group that has high risk factors for it, You need to fucking lose weight. Like, it's not a joke. The doctors are not playing with you. Eventually, you will develop some type of chronic illness. And it's probably already in the stages of developing, and you just don't realize it yet because your blood work does not show it yet. Remember that. Health is not static. Everything changes eventually. Everybody gets sick eventually. There is no reason for you, a young person, to be dealing with a chronic illness and being on multiple medications like I am. And this attitude that all these people have telling you that you'll be fine, none of these people are going to take you to your dialysis appointment. None of these people are going to take care of you if you get a transplant. None of these people are going to pay for the expensive medication that you'll have to take one day. None of these people are going to do any of that. They sit on the internet and they push this idea, right, that you can be healthy. I'm still healthy and I'm 21. But when they are 31, they won't be, because I wasn't. And when they are 41, they won't be, because I won't be, right? And it'll be too late for them, right? It's too late for me. So my goal in this video is to impress upon you, this person listening. I don't care how much you weigh. If you engage in any kind of unhealthy behavior, whether it be smoking too much, drinking too much, eating processed food too much, overeating too much, whatever too much, you will eventually pay the price for it. You cannot write checks. Eventually they have to be cashed.